It's just a matter of context and perspective, I think. If you look at the numbers, we find that it's around 0.04% of global primary energy consumption, which is large if you compare it to some small countries, but small if you compare it to certain industries. So it is a matter of just simply contextualizing it. We find, for instance, that it's similar to the energy consumption associated with zinc extraction, smaller than the energy consumption associated with domestic tumble dryers, for instance, and 10 times smaller than the energy associated with domestic refrigeration. So it's just a matter of putting it in context and just looking at also the benefits of the system alongside the perceived costs.
Yeah, I mean, you're also the co-founder of Coinmetrics, which aggregates a lot of this data around cryptocurrencies in real time as well, adds some transparency to this emerging asset class. In general, though, there do seem to be a lot of conflicting numbers and research reports out there where energy usage for something like Bitcoin is concerned. For example, I was just looking at, it was published earlier this month, a big report from the New York Times as well that actually put a higher electricity number to it, and you just touched on it, but also compared that to some of the smaller countries, perhaps like Finland, in terms of the usage. Why is there so much conflicting data?
I think it's likely that we have a similar number to the New York Times. There's just a difference between primary energy and electricity consumption. But the difficult part is finding the estimated carbon emissions impact, because in order to do that, you have to determine where the miners are and what kind of energy sources they're using. And that's not the easiest task, because a lot of the miners don't really feel like identifying themselves. And there's no easy way to determine where they are, whether they're on the grid, whether they're grid connected, and what precise energy inputs they're using. And so, partly there's a lot of transparency around Bitcoin's energy consumption. You can do simple back of the envelope math to look at the number of miners, the kinds of miners, look at the hash rate. But then the last mile is going to the carbon emissions impact. That part is really challenging.
I wonder where you think that leads us in terms of China's policy toward crypto, and whether or not they're comforted by that context, and whether or not they're any less resolute in outlawing mining to begin with.
Well, China has undertaken an apparent push to render their grid more sustainable, and that may have been part of their motivation to push Bitcoin mining out of the country. But much of the mining in China was done in the provinces with excesses of hydropower like Sichuan and Yunnan, where effectively Bitcoin mining was net neutral from a carbon perspective. So it's not 100% clear that it was a climate agenda driving their push of Bitcoin miners out of the country. It may just have been a desire to eliminate cryptocurrency as a means to offshore wealth and get around the capital controls that they impose. And so I think that's probably just part of the broader crackdown on crypto in China. I don't see mining coming back there anytime soon.
I want to get back to understanding the differential between your estimates and those of other sources. You're saying essentially you were able to identify the energy sources behind the Bitcoin miners and those that were obviously not actually emitting carbon because they were using a cleaner energy. Is that correct?
Well, with any estimate like that, there's going to be a degree of imprecision. So we don't presume to know exactly what kind of energy is going into mining. And in fact, our estimates are probably a little more conservative than you'll see for a lot of Bitcoiners out there. But the purpose of the report was to really give people stable models to project the long-term trajectory of energy and emissions impact of the Bitcoin network, and also identify tools that miners can use to decarbonize their operations. And so by no means are we saying that Bitcoin mining is fully decarbonized today. It's certainly not. But we are saying there's a number of really interesting pathways here to achieving a fully sustainable Bitcoin.